Good evening and welcome to a playoff special this week, joined by Mark Stallard as always. Unusual position on a Monday when we're recording this show. We don't know who we're playing, but we know we are definitely playing on Sunday, 12:30 kickoff at Meadow Lane, either Barnet or Boreham Wood, depending when you're watching this. That game's being played tomorrow evening. A week in which there has been, I think, significant debate about relationships between players, management, and supporters. And many of you may have already seen a very inspiring video that the club have posted just an hour or two before we went live with this show, featuring Jonathan Hammocks, a not supporter who sadly was paralysed from the neck downwards after an accident. He was invited along by Luke Williams, the manager, and addressed the players in the dressing room before the game on Saturday. If you've not already seen the video, I suggest you watch it. There is a link on the message boards. It's on the club YouTube channel. Where is everyone watching from tonight? Kevin Duska Jr., the Canadian, we've not heard from him for a few weeks. Has he defected to the Canadian brackets Hollywood movement and Ryan Reynolds? Remy Sky, New York, where are you, Remy? Not heard from you either. And the Montenegrin branch. Didn't realise we had one, but we do. Have been in touch with me this week. So where are you watching the show from tonight? Neil Warnock. We did a special one-on-one secret to the playoffs. And before anyone asks or posts little messages, it's absolutely not a lottery, as Neil explained to us in that programme. Also, Notts fans, congratulations to Sam Pacey. Aside from playing centre-half or centre midfield in my son's not Sunday morning football team, Magpie United, 4th this season, not too bad. He's been to every single game Notts have played in the league this season. How many others have managed that? Something I've never actually managed. I've missed one on countless occasions, but he's done every single league game this season. Who else has managed that feat? And of course, we'll be previewing Sunday's game. Quick look back at York. Stel, very good evening to you. Keeping well? Nervous? Excited?
Yeah, evening everybody. Not nervous, not yet. Excited, looking forward to it. Notts have got nothing to be scared of, and that's the thing. As you mentioned there, Neil Warnock saying it's not a lottery. Again, what are your definition of a lottery? I think we've discussed this previous years, but you know. The best team generally will win the playoffs. It's a mini cup competition, and Notts have got to win 2 games consecutively. You know, how difficult has that been this season? Not difficult at all. Of course, the pressure of the playoffs, you know, the nature of win or miss out makes it a real knife edge. But you've only got to take inspiration, and the players have got to take inspiration from the league table that says they are the second best team, that they're considerably better than any other team in this playoff. And yes, that doesn't make it easy. Yes, that doesn't really count for anything come 12:30 on Sunday, whoever we're facing. The job's still got to be done, but it should give them enough confidence, belief that they can go and get the job done by doing what they've done over the 46 games of the season.
Let's get some comments. Lots of people listening in already. Karen Knight, hello everyone. Really enjoyed the talk with Neil. Evening all, says Chris Gosling. Looks like the Cop has just sold out for Sunday and less than 100 tickets left in the pavers. Excitement building already. Notts have already announced that they will be making sections of the Jimmy Cyril stand available, but you can't actually buy those online. I think you need to ring or go up in person, so you can still get your tickets. Evening all from Luke Beardsley. Great one-to-one with Mr. Warnock. Chris Gosling. Barnet or Boreham Wood both pose different problems, so not fussed who wins. Just need to have the faith in our ability to beat both of them at the Lane. Josh Lafferty, rooting for you guys from America. Stephen Newton, great Neil Warnock interview. Got my ticket for his show. Only a few left. Shane Walker, evening all. We'll be there Sunday. Watching currently in sunny Leigh-on-Solent. I'm down in Newquay, Cornwall. My bomb's gone like I didn't put any sun cream on, so I look bright, ready scarlet. Never mind. Malcolm Edwards, good luck in the playoffs from a Wrexham fan. Stephen Newton on the subject of matches. Sam Pacey managed every league game this season. I managed to get to 30, says Stephen. Luke Beardsley, teams always up their game when visiting Meadow Lane. We need to be on our game like we have most of the season. Dale Pikett, evening all. Yeah, I tell you what, we'll start with Stel. The video with Jonathan, who suffered a very sad accident, paralysed from the neck down. Luke Williams heard about it, invited Jonathan to come down and address all the players, videoed it. Really, really good. If you've not seen it, go to Notts County's YouTube channel. There's been big debate, hasn't there, about interaction between players and fans. I'm thinking Leeds. Then we had the issue with Tottenham refunding monies for their performance at Newcastle. Notts have historically always had very good relations with fans and players, but a very inspiring piece of video.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I've seen it literally an hour or so ago. Didn't know you were going to speak about it, but I would have mentioned it myself. It was that powerful. It's about 5 minutes long, but again, really good, shows really good relations with the club, the fans, the players, the management, every facet of Notts County just working in synchronicity. And, what a sad, but, inspirational story maybe Jonathan is, and, heartfelt, feelings with him, and what he spoke about, to actually go and have the courage to do that as well on his behalf was brilliant. And from a personal point of view, just to be a little bit selfish about it, about hearing him, a guy that's had an accident and is paralysed now from the neck down in sort of middle ages of life, speaking about his connection with Notts via listening on the radio, and it sort of brought home to me, sometimes I'm a bit flippant about doing the radio, and we're just waffling and talking and it's a bit, but you hear a story like that and it brings it home to you that no, people rely on it. People rely on their football. I mean, football club is always a community asset anyway, but I think you sometimes forget those people like Jonathan who cannot physically get to the games, maybe financially can't get to the games, whether it's an old age thing or whatever the reason that people can't get to the games. There's just an avid following for Notts County, as there are all clubs, I'm sure, but that can't actually get to the games. And it brought it home to it. It was a powerful 5 minutes. I thought it was brilliant, and I thought Jonathan spoke really well. Not easy to go into a dressing room full of all the players. I think it was brilliant from Luke Williams, brilliant from the club to do that. And yeah, I'd recommend anybody to go and have a look at it. And it's just re-emphasises the quality and the connection that Notts has and tries to have, with its fan base. And I think, to crowbar another name, but a lot of that goes down to Jason Turner as well. I think he's been substantial over the years to harmonise and harness that sort of relationship and realise the importance of it. And you're right when you mentioned the Leeds video that got out on, where the players were just filtered past the young girl and, the young fans and nobody acknowledged him, nobody said hello, nobody did anything. And you go, that's criminal. That's criminal. And I know they've put out an apologetic statement, rubbish, absolutely pathetic. Do not forget where your bread and butter is. I don't care. I never got to the heights of the Premier League or anything like that. But I'd like to think as a person, I would never forget, no matter how many fans, the fans are what make football. And it things like that annoy me as an ex-player, the Leeds video, and things like seeing the Jonathan video with it Notts put out and knowing the relationship they have, and hopefully the relationship Notts players, current players have with the fans is strong. That fills me with pride about Notts.
And Craig Smith literally just dropping us a note, Stel, which kind of totally echoes the point you make about being a conduit and a link for people that can't necessarily get to all the games, or indeed any games, depending where they may be based. Greg Smith says, I can't get to the games due to disability and mental health issues. The radio is my only connection. And the way that I keep in touch with not Stephen Newton. Yes, Radio Nottingham. These are the people who rely on the radio. Tell you what, let's square away York on Saturday. Depends, I guess, how important you think it was, how much of a barometer it is for the playoff game coming. But you did call it very correctly last week, Stel, when people were debating rest people, rest a few, full strength. You were right. You called it as a full strength team.
Yeah, clearly Luke's listening to me, obviously. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think that was a difficult call. Again, it was only if anyone was carrying a knock or a niggle. The way I equated it to was you treat it almost like the final pre-season game. You know, going into a season, you want your starting lineup to be ready to each other, and then maybe make changes from an hour onwards, sort of thing, so you're not risking too many injuries and what have you. I mean, let's face it, there was a heart in mouth, or a couple of heart in mouth moments, wasn't there, when Macca went down injured after hitting the post, and then Ruben with his reaction 30 seconds later, not even that, but you know, you're thinking, oh God, things could go very, very wrong. And like I say, Luke Williams and I'd have been sat here with egg on my face going, well, it's a terrible call doing it, but thankfully we think everything's okay, and we'll go on to next Sunday with a full strength sort of lineup and everybody fit and available. So yeah, I know the result wasn't what we wanted, but I think in terms of the performance was good against a team that absolutely came to shut up shop. We're not going to face that in the playoffs necessarily. Whoever comes, you know, they're going to have a bit more of a go. Of course, they're going to want to be tight and not give us anything, but they're going to have a little bit of a go. And we got a little bit of a warning about not switching off. You know, no matter how on top you are, how dominant you are, if you don't put a game to bed, you know, game's always live. So, look, what it will count for come Sunday, it won't be a great deal, because the atmosphere and the game as itself, it is a one-off and a completely unique game. So, but I think, you know, it was the right call, full strength team, and like I say, barring a little bit of a heart murmur, I think we've got there, and everything will be fine going into Sunday.
Pete Bond says, I can't get to the games because I live in Swansea. I love listening to Mark and Charlie on the radio. Luke Beardsley, when I can't get to an away game, I love listening to Mark excuse me, and Charlie. Also helpful for my uncle and granddad who can't financially make every game. Chris Gosling says about Saturday, we tried to get a 1-0 win in cruise control, which is understandable. But after York scored, we went for it again and could have scored 3 after their equaliser. Their keeper was inspired. So, regular season is done. We play Barnet or Boreham Wood. They play tomorrow evening. Barnet have home advantage, tomorrow being Tuesday evening. Extra time and penalties. And then the winner of that game will be at Meadow Lane, 12:30 on Sunday. I think I've got all that right, and Stel will absolutely tell me if I've got it right, which is not uncommon. While Stel answers this question, everyone out there, our flock, who would you prefer? If you're picking a team for us to play on Sunday, would it be Barnet or would it be Boreham Wood? Ping in, get on the keyboards, put your club down now, and a little brief explanation as to why. And we'll now ask Stel, does it matter? Any preference?
No great preference. Does it matter? I don't think so. Again, I go back to what matters is Notts' performance. If Notts play well, they win the game, be it Barnet, Boreham Wood, or anybody in the playoffs. But I think it is quite an interesting difference between the two teams. You look at, you know, Barnet finished, I think, a couple of points ahead of Boreham Wood in 5th, score more goals, but concede more goals. You know, would that suit Notts? Would that make for a more end-to-end game? Would that pose more of a threat to Notts? I don't know. I think, you know, Arguably, you'd go if it'd be a more open game, certainly than it would be Boreham Wood, who got the most solid defence in the division. Finished the league table with the strongest defence, only conceded 40, but conversely don't score loads of goals either. So it's pick your poison. But again, all that is only statistical data, which is a reflection of what has gone and not what will come. It's all about what happens in the 90, 120 minutes that we might have on Sunday. Either way, Notts won't fear either of them teams. What may happen, or what will possibly happen, is that whoever faces Notts has got the prospect of coming to Meadow Lane to face the leading scorers in the division, who finished 20 plus points ahead of them, nearly 30 plus points ahead of them in the league in the regular season, with the leading scorer in the league in Macaulay Langstaff, and one of the best players in the league in Ruben Rodriguez, and no end of other problems and quality players and anything you care to name. I would always look at it where if we're feeling nervous, if not fans are feeling nervous, spare a thought for what opposition fans feel coming to Meadow Lane. Yes, people might raise the game. Of course they will. It's a playoff semi-final with a chance to get to Wembley. But that should inspire Notts to raise their game as well. Whatever we can find problems to put in our own way, they're the same problems that are in the way of the opposition. Yet they've got to face Notts County, who finished 7th, who've got 100 plus goals and 100 plus points in the season. So it's a bigger challenge for whichever team comes to Meadow Lane, and they've got to find loads more answers to problems than Notts have got. But again, it is still all on the day. Preference, I haven't got one, I've got to be honest. And what I will say is, Paul, yeah, you were right with all the data. Yeah, it sounded right to me, yeah.
Dale Pikett, Barnet. Derek Flowers, Barnet. Paul Huskisson, Barnet. David Amy, Barnet. Malcolm Shearston, Barnet. Chris Gosling, Luke Williams said he doesn't need 2 strikers on the bench. Zedo, guess he was fit. That is in answer to Junior Marias, by the way. Luke Beardsley, absolutely Barnet. Luke Garrard has always managed well against Notts. Chris B, I'd rather play Barnet, but confident either way. Stephen Newton, Barnet. James Ford, Barnet. Boreham Wood, he says, would potentially park the bus more. Gary Smithers, there we go. Just to be contrary, Gary, Boreham Wood will beat either. That's the spirit. Ian M, have we ever beaten Boreham Wood? Barnet for me. Anthony McLean, Barnet. Chris Gosling, Barnet's the only answer. But I thought Brennan did a bit of tactical number on us at their place, holding back first half and then matched our press second half when teams usually tire. Dale Pikett, don't think they can park the bus when they come to our place. Zedo, if Notts turn up, either team would be worried. Echoing your comments there, Stel, about us. Pray we have a decent ref and a fair share of luck. By choice, I'd go for Barnet. Ian M. Barnet were buoyed by their goal right on half-time and gave them something to fight for in the second half. It kind of took the wind out of our sails. So I think it's about 99.8% for Barnet. Stel. Does it make any difference to Luke's preparations that today's session probably only a very light loosener, and tomorrow's they won't basically know how to specifically prepare before Wednesday for the game? Make any difference or not to a training week?
It'll probably make a slight difference to individual bits that they'll do in sessions, because again, as we spoke about, Barnet or Boreham Wood, they will offer slightly different threats. They will have slightly different perceived weaknesses and avenues to exploit. So yeah, it would affect what they're doing in a session. It's not going to change, the days that they're going to be in and the work that they're going to be doing. But when it comes down to the analysis side of things and looking at, say, how you're going to go about things, of course, Notts have got a framework for how they've gone about things in every game all season. But you always analyse your opponents specifically and look at your opponents specifically. And again, perceived strengths, perceived weaknesses, probably more perceived weaknesses and things like set pieces. Certainly set piece analysis is going to be very different from what Barnet do to what Boreham Wood do. Then you look at long throws. I know Boreham Wood have got, what's his name, Chris Bush, haven't they, who's got a long throw. I can't think off the top of my head what a Barnet do. So there's things like that. There'll be technical analysis of the opposition. Now, how Luke Williams implements that within his training sessions, whether that's done in the classroom, as they call it, on videos and footage like that, and just speak about it, or whether they go out and do bits on the training ground in terms of, we think they've got a weakness here and this is how we're going to exploit it, etc., etc. I don't know how he actually works. Different coaches, different managers will work in different ways with that, but they will definitely wait to probably until after Tuesday night's result and then tailor from Wednesday onwards things specifically to whichever team they're playing. And just in answer to the guy's question, because I've got my notes and things, we beat Boreham Wood 1-0 at home last year. Matty Palmer, I didn't remember that. I've got that on my notes. So we have beaten Boreham Wood. And obviously we beat Barnet once this season. So, like I say, I don't know whether that helps sway anybody any which way but Luke's. But Matty Palmer 1-0 last season. We've drawn with them twice this season. And obviously we beat Barnet at home not many weeks back and we drew at their place.
I'll bet you, in terms of managerial mind games, if it's Boreham Wood, and I suspect Barnet would do the same, Luke Garrard will praise Notts County to the high heavens in his press briefing this week. They deserve to go up, really, blah, blah, blah. I promise you he will. I promise you he will.
He will. I mean, he does that anyway, doesn't he? But I think, I'd say normally you'd go, well, it's mind games and whatever. But I think that this season, the way Notts have been, any manager that doesn't praise them would be seen as, well, you're just being churlish there. That's absolutely, you cannot not praise this Notts team. It's ridiculous. And they've got, and certainly from a technical aspect, and when I say about how Notts play, the sort of football that they've played throughout the season, that will win plaudits off fellow coaches. We spoke about the guy at Wealdstone, what a good job he'd done there. Stuart Maynard, wasn't it? But his praise, because they see the way that Notts County play, that Luke Williams has got this style of play with them. And that's not saying that's what they're trying to replicate, but that's the standard that they're trying to achieve. And that's the standard that can be achieved. So I think it resonates with fellow coaches, if you like, around the league. So you're right, Luke Garrard will praise him. I think Dean Brennan would praise Notts as well. I don't think that's not going to be specifically, a Luke Garrard tactic. I think that's going to be, whichever team you are, you're going to play down and try and praise up Notts County. When you're going away to Notts County in a semi-final of a playoff, that's just the nature of it, isn't it? But again, that's not so take that in the stride. They've had plaudits all season and never seem to let it affect them.
Derek Flowers says Notts need the first goal, which means the opposition can't sit back, and hopefully we can exploit the space that would leave. That's my manager's head on, says Derek. Chris Gosling, Barnet scored off a long throw against us. They did face more long throws that game than we did against Wrexham. Atrophis 4-1 and 6-1 on Barnet's last visits to the lane. Happy to face them. The playoffs, not a lottery, definitely not. That's not me saying it, although I do say it quite a lot. So says Neil Warnock, and many of you will have hopefully had the chance to see Neil's interview that he did with us. Neil's coming over to Nottingham in June the 14th at the Playhouse to do part of his tour. And wouldn't it be great that we are then an EPL club when he comes back? But Neil was giving us an insight. He is statistically the most successful playoff manager in British football history. 4 wins. His first 2 were both with Notts. And just to throw something else into the bargain to let us know he does know his onions, he got Scarborough promoted as champions out of the, I think it was called the Vauxhall Conference in the Jurassic era, when there was only 1 team. We moan about 2, there was only 1. And he was making the point in the show that he got Scarborough when they were rated as 50-1 outsiders, and all the money, the latter day Wrexham, if you like, were Barnet, Stan Flashman, Barry Fry. Neil clearly is a man management kind of guy rather than a statistical guy. He talks a little bit about that as well. But we've spoken about it many times. It's a point that Neil mentions. Mentality is key. Although he did make an interesting admission. He said first playoff game, because Notts finished a long way ahead. They finished in the top playoff spot and finished a long way ahead. And in those days, you had to play 2 games. And so Notts went to Bolton, he was explaining, and Notts had finished 17 points above Bolton, which was clearly a lot. And he said in the 64th minute or whatever it was, away from home, Bolton go 1 up. And he said in his first reaction is, what on earth am I doing here? How unfair is football? Blah, 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 blah. But you have to get over that. Clearly, mentality is going to be a major part of this still.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, again, we feel like we've had this every year, haven't they? Talk about, is it a lottery? Is it not a lottery? Like I say, it comes down to what your definition of a lottery. By definition, it's not a lottery. If it was a lottery, they'd just put the names in a hat and pick one out, and that'd win it. The reason that makes it a lottery is that what you've done over the 46 games previously doesn't count for a heck of a great deal. Although in the National League, as you've just sort of mentioned, you do get a bit of advantage for finishing second and third. You get these home ties. You do get an advantage finishing fourth and fifth. You get a home quarter final. So there is a slight reward for that. But as Grimsby proved last season, that can count for nothing. So it's about the best team generally over 3 games for them from 4 to 7 and 2 games for Notts. The best team over them games will get promoted into the Football League. And that includes mentality, because you've got to handle the mental side of it, the cutthroat nature of it being a sudden death game, win you through. I say, it's a knockout cup game, isn't it? That's what it is. Notts are at a semi-final, aiming to get to a final, win that, you're in the Football League. Again, if these were ordinary league games, you wouldn't be too worried. But because there's an absolute finite, win or that's the end, suddenly there's a little bit of perceived pressure on it. And this is where your mentality, your professional mentality, has to get over the fact of there's no more pressure than any other game. It's the same game, 11 players v 11, goal at both ends. So you do what's been successful for you throughout the season. You do nothing different. And generally, you should get the same result with all the same work rate, the same thing. You don't go into your shell. You can't let the occasion affect you negatively in terms of your performance.
Do you change routines this week, Stal? Neil said he had a very set playoff routine, which would kind of mean doing different things. You used to take them to the Belfry, get them away for a few days, that sort of thing. Or do you do what is tried and tested and works for you in the case of Luke?
I think Luke Williams will stick to what he's tried and tested. The way, like I say, just look back at that league table. There's no need to change anything that they've done. What they have done has not quite been good enough to win the league, but on any other year but this. But that's the way it is. But you don't then go, we need to change things. Mate, I've played for managers that have changed things up on FA Cup weekends, typically. Yeah. So in the run-up to the FA Cup, the third round or whatever round it would be, you'd go away or you'd go to a hotel, you'd do something different. Billy Dearden used to take us walking up in the Peak District and end up at his mate Lenny Badger's pub on a Tuesday afternoon or whatever, and we'd all be allowed to have a meal and a couple of pints. So there is an element of that. But I think the FA Cup's a separate issue. The playoffs, if what you've been doing has been successful, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I don't imagine Luke Williams will. And things like that tend to be, if you feel that the players in the dressing room maybe need a little bit of a spark or a little bit of something to break either the monotony of something, maybe you've stumbled into the playoffs a little bit, whatever the reason. But if the manager gets a feeling that maybe we just need to do something different, then so be it. But I wouldn't do that specifically in Nott's case. I don't think Luke Williams will. And again, that comes down to a sort of man management, personal management kind of thing, which it doesn't necessarily need to be the playoffs. It could be at any point during the season. But again, Notts haven't had a bad spell throughout the whole season. So I wouldn't change a thing. I would go about things exactly as they have done.
Any advantage to Notts or not that they don't have, aside from being automatically through to next Sunday, but clearly Boreham Wood or Barnet will have played an extra game in this midweek. Is there any advantage for Notts in that or not?
Possibly a little bit that they've had a midweek game, particularly if it goes to extra time. There's a certain amount of nervous energy that the players will be, other than physical energy, obviously, of a game. But with the game being a Sunday, they're playing on a Tuesday. It's not like Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday that they're playing. They've got an extra day. I don't, at this stage of the season, I don't think it's going to be a massive problem or a bonus one way or another. I think it's, like you say, as the other teams know who they're playing, I think all the teams know exactly when they're going to be lined up to play. And if you aren't ready for a playoff game, then you're never going to be ready for a game in your life.
This will be our fourth successive playoff campaign, I believe, in our attempt to get back into the Football League. Some players have been involved in all of those playoff campaigns. I'm thinking Sam Slocum, Richard Brindley, Jim O'Brien. Will those players, we've had three different managers or head coaches, depending which way you want to put it, Neil Ardley, Ian Birchnell and Luke Williams. Do those previous campaigns give us things to have learnt from, or given there are quite a few newer players and key players this year, does it not make any difference?
The players you talk about, they're experienced players, aren't they? And they'll have experienced loss. So it will be, I'm sure they'll be in the dressing room saying to the players, look, treat this like any other game. We've been there before. If we don't do the job, you get beat. So don't think it's a formality just because of what's happened in the league and what's happened at the league table. But by the same token, they'll be, able to pass on, look, we've got more than enough ability. There's enough fresh bodies in there that haven't been tainted. But you poke yourself in the eye as well. Or you just falling asleep listening to me.
Some onions. I'm just and moving as it is. I promise you, I am not shedding tears with the video.
I thought you were just falling asleep. I thought you were rubbing sleep out your eyes. Am I going on that long?
No, you're not. It's just God, stop. Oh dear, keep going. Ignore me.
I don't think. I think you can use experience. Like we always say, you learn off your experience and you use them to fuel you in the future. But I don't think it's a dressing room that's almost tainted by playoff failure before there's been enough turnover of players, for that not to be a problem. So I don't envisage that being a problem at all. Is it a help? I don't think it's a massive help either. I think it's just the fact that you've either got a good, solid, together, focused dressing room, or you haven't. And Notts absolutely have.
You're the manager now, Sunday. Do you send the players out to go for the jugular straight away? Or do you say, just keep it tight, whatever we do, don't concede a goal?
I send them out exactly as they've been sent out every game this season. We're at home. We're better than the opposition. Go out there and prove it right from the off. Go and play your football. If you have to be patient, you know how we play. Pass the ball quickly, set the tempo, dictate the tempo, control the game, go and win the game. It's as simple as that. Do nothing different. What's been working has been working for a reason. And like I say, you can't reiterate that enough, but you've still got to go out there and do it. So don't think it's just going to happen. You've got to go and make it happen, but don't start doing anything differently than what's brought success throughout the season.
Chris Gosling says, if we beat Boreham Wood in the semi and Bromley in the final, right, hang on, then we could still have beaten all other 23 teams in the National League this season. Well done, Chris. I think you are the only person that's worked that one out. Chris John Wright, good luck to Notts from Wrexham. Notts are a great team like Wrexham, says Chris. Keith Mullins, the old onion excuse, used it many a time. Lol. I just hope I'm not crying come about 2:30 on Sunday. Doesn't bear thinking about, does it? And I'm doing everything I can here, not to start getting carried away and talking about the final, because I know a lot of people are booking this, booking that, trained strikes. It's all, for me, at this moment in time, irrelevant and immaterial. Neil also made the point in his sort of playoff feature with us that really the hardest games in both of his playoff campaigns were the semi-finals, not the final. Just beat Middlesbrough. That was a titanic game over 2 legs. And it was pretty tight against Bolton. So let's just play whoever we've got in front of us. Now, Chris Gosling, I think, I've not got it to hand, so I can't read it all out. But there was a very long Facebook post. I think it was from you, Chris, which I actually thought, well, it could have come from me. And if it had come from me, everyone would be moaning at me. In which Chris actually used this word, Stel. He said that, wipe the slate clean. If we don't go up, for everything that the club has achieved this year, it counts for nothing. It's viewed as a failure because the objective before a ball was kicked was to get promotion. So you judge yourself on that end result, not necessarily how close you got. I don't sort of actually directly where it's a failure because that hasn't happened yet. But how important is it, you think, Stel, when you've got a 42 goal striker, you've got Ruben chipping in nearly 20. So you've got more than 60 goals from 2 players. And clearly the future of those 2 players is clearly shrouded in doubt because of the quality of those players. And I think you would have to be an incredibly rose-tinted, spectacled person to think both players will be putting on the black and white stripes next year. How important for the club, having failed 3 times so far, is it to get it done with the set of players they've currently got available to
them? It's trying to choose my word carefully with that. Yeah. It's massively important. It's massively important. I mean, I would ordinarily say crucial, whatever, it would be. But I think more from, the elephant in the room that we're all tiptoeing around is the fact that Notts can have the season that they've had, been so close to winning it, would have won it in any other season, and then we go and lose in the playoffs and go, well, that's a massive failure. And ordinarily, I would probably agree, go, look, we've not been promoted, so it is a bit of a failure of a season. But I don't know if you've seen, there was an American athlete,
yes,
so it's an NBA, NFL, I don't know what he was.
Giannis, Milwaukee Bucks. I was going to bring it up. We had
well, there we go. And he spoke, he got asked that question, whoever he played for, whether it's basketball, baseball, I don't know what it was, but I caught this bit of his interview where he's saying there's no, where he said about Michael Jordan won 6, whatever they win over there, out of his 15-year career. So were 9 years of his career a failure? And you go, there's no failure in sport. There's just different levels and steps to success. And I thought, well, I've never really personally thought of it like that. I would have thought, yeah, if you don't get promoted, it's been classed as a failure. But to term this season as a failure, if we don't get promoted, which I'm still confident we do, I would be very, very, I'd find it difficult to use that word for this season, even if we don't go up. It would be massively frustrating. It would be an unbelievable hammer blow. But I think there are massive things that we can build on, them stepping stones, them steps to success for future years. Now, if we go up, there are still steps we can use to build on. But look, the elephant in the room we're not talking about particularly because we don't want it to happen. I'm quietly confident it won't happen. But could I term this season a failure if we don't win the playoffs? I don't think I could use that word as a failure. I don't think I'd call. Have we achieved our aim, our ultimate aim? No. Could I call it a failure? I would be and the most harsh person in the world would be hard pushed to call it a failure. But I absolutely take your point that while Ruben's at the end of his contract, Macca 42 goals is going to be alerting everybody from Championship down. Promotion is massively important.
Yeah. Just it's interesting you mentioned the basketball guy. So it's Giannis from Milwaukee Bucks, and they were the top seeds in the NBA, and not dissimilar to our playoffs. The top seeds play the number 8, so they played Miami. So top plays 8th, and they play it over best of 7 games. And it is very unusual that the top seed lose to the 8th place team, which is exactly what Milwaukee did. And then the local reporter for Milwaukee in the aftermatch press conference says to Giannis, would you describe this season as a failure? And Giannis gives a very erudite, a very comprehensive, balanced answer. And it's interesting you've seen it, Stell, in my world, PR, all of that sort of thing. There's been a huge debate on LinkedIn, and a lot of people say that's a fantastic answer. He's really put the journalist in his place. The journalist should never have asked that. It's rude. It's all the rest of it. And then you have another side of opinion, largely from people who are kind of more committed into sport rather than PR, who are saying, no, the journalist is perfectly right to ask the question. And the question is couched in the phrase that Milwaukee are the top team throughout the entire league season. Therefore, it's a failure not to have beaten Milwaukee Bucks in a best of 7 games, with Miami having finished 8th. It's interesting you picked up on it. I know a lot of people have seen it, and I guess there are some parallels with knots on that. And I don't particularly want to talk too much about whether failure it's not, because we're up and we're at them. But like you've just given an answer to, I think it is very important that we perhaps fully appreciate, for me, this group of players needs to deliver, because we probably haven't got this group of players next season. And 42 goals from one player. Have we wasted that opportunity not to end up going up when you have such a fantastic goal threat and such a quality player at this level as Ruben? And I think that's quite an interesting debate to be had. I certainly don't. Our recruitment's been brilliant, Stal. It's not easy replacing a 42-goal striker, whoever that person is, And it does appear on the football grapevine. You've heard a lot of it. I have. Neil Warnock alluded to it as well in his interview. I think unless we get promoted, and even then there's a big question mark, I don't see Macaulay, whatever happens in these playoffs, playing in the National League next season. Let's put it like that.
No, I think I'd agree. I mean, you're back to the sort of, well, it's not the Kyle Wootton situation. That's more Ruben, isn't it? Coming to the end of a contract, the player is sort of free to leave if he wants to. And the way that the best argument for convincing him to stay is promotion. I think with Macca, again, promotion would certainly help. But, and again, I totally take the point that how do you replace a 42-goal striker if we haven't got him? Virtually impossible. But I will give you 2 possible scenarios that might allay the doom mongers and all the black clouds of that might bring. Is that, can Macca do it again if he stays? Even if it's in the National League, does he get 42 goals again next season? It's a hell of an achievement that's only ever happened once in Notts County's history. So to ask a player, even if he's broke history one year, to go, well, break it again next year, there's no guarantee of that. And also, if Macca did go, I would back the recruitment as it's been positive to go and get a striker, a decent striker, with the money that, if Macca did go, would be brought in, to go and have similar attributes to Macca in a team at the National League level, as strong as we have been this season, to provide the same amount of chances as we provide for a centre forward, and say, okay, well, you might not get 42. That's exceptional, even if you're Macca, But I would say I'd have backed myself to score a couple in this team with the chances they created. So I think if they go and get a striker who can play up there, and it might be Kedwin Scott. I'm not saying he's not already in the building. It could be Junior Moraes.
Very well.
But what I'm saying is the dominance that Notts have had, the control of games that Notts have had, there's no guarantee we will have that next season, whatever division we're in.
Yeah.
But if we were still in the National League, God forbid we aren't, but if we were, they've tied Matty Palmer down, Adam Chickson. They obviously intend to add, have what we've got, add to it. If Ruben went, that would be a massive, massive loss. Of course it would. His creative ability, you see for the pass, for the goal on Saturday. Was it Saturday? Sunday? Forget what. You see the quality. So that's difficult to replace. That isn't abundant out there, players with that sort of ability. But I think at National League level, Notts have done well. They've tied down the manager to a longer-term contract mid-season, Matty Palmer to a longer-term contract mid-season. Adam Chickson's just signed. They're intent on keeping their strongest players. I'm sure they'll do everything they can. Let's forget Macca. We're writing his obituaries about him leaving. He's still got 2 years left. So he will only ever leave on the club's terms. It's only really Ruben that's in that grey area of being out of contract. But I would back the recruitment to not necessarily go and get a 42 goal a season man, and whoever, if there is a case of a different man coming in, we can't judge him. Well, if you don't get 42 goals, he's just no good. This is an exceptional season, and that backs up my bit about whatever happens. This season isn't a failure; it's been an incredible season. But I absolutely take your point that promotion, which is 2 games away for Notts, you'll never have a better chance because it's the chance that's right in front of you. What's in the future, you can't control. What's in the past has gone, you can't control. You can only control the present and what's up next. And that is a semi-final. And if we do that right, then there's a final. And if we do that right, then we're in the Football League. And that is the main aim.
Atrofes says Kedwin Scott would have got 30 plus this season playing in Macca's role. Phil Davis, good luck to Notts as a Wrexham fan. Directly after the playoffs, we felt a massive failure. That feeling dissipated and it was looking forward to the next. Paul Willits, this all tells us what the club means to us fans. It's more than football. Chris B, I would love Macca and Ruben to stay, but I think Scott and Austin would be decent replacements, even before we talk about new recruits. We've kind of just painted we don't make it in the playoffs, the negative consequences. But playoffs can be are pivotal, aren't they, Stel? They change managers' careers. They change players' careers. Neil Warnock got 2 playoffs and went from being a 3rd division manager to managing in the Premier League, or Division 1 as it then was, as a result of 2 playoff victories. We, not that we like to bring it up, we lost to Coventry. We should have won at Cov. Dodgy offside, Jonathan Fort would have made it 2-2. Coventry win the game. Look where Coventry are now. Football's always a game of fine margins, but playoffs are so pivotal as to whether a club can suddenly ignite and have blast off, or it stalls and it feels, in footballing parlance, the end of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. We know the emotional roller coaster that football is, just from one week to the next, one football season to the next. And I think Notts fans and everybody who follows Notts has got a real claim to being through the mill more than most. But you're absolutely right. Your fortunes, your momentum is a massive thing in sport. Momentum. We talk about it in individual games. We talk about it over a period of time, but it can work off the pitch as well. Again, that synchronicity between what happens on the pitch to what happens off the pitch. Now, I think we've got our sort of eggs all in the basket off the pitch. I think from the owners down, I think we've got, and I say God bless Jason, who, his funeral is on Wednesday. God bless, he's no longer there. But, I think everything is set up off the pitch, throughout the structure of the club. There's stability. There's people doing their job well in whatever role that is. And I think in terms of the footballing side of it, I think Luke Williams has come in and been an absolute revelation. No praise high enough for him. And Ryan Harley as well. Richard Montague takes credit behind the scenes as well for their off the pitch stuff. You want to name check everybody that's involved in things, but the coaching staff, the consistency that Notts have got on the pitch, and again, why I wouldn't talk about failure for Notts is because I think the way it's harmonised fans, and go back to that Jonathan's team talk on Saturday and the video that the club have put out, he speaks about this being a season that has been unlike almost any other. And this is a guy who's 50 years of age. He speaks about a season in the 80s and a season in the 90s that stays in his memory for the type of football. Well, this season, almost usurps everything. Forget about the level, but the football, the standard. And I think that galvanises a club. It brings the fans together. We've sold 11,000 plus already from them going on sale, tickets, that is, for Sunday, for them going on sale this morning. I think there is a gathering momentum for Notts. And I look back at teams like Lincoln City, a few years ago, they had that cup run season. They got out the conference or the National League the same season. They got up out of League Two the following season. You can have that momentum. It doesn't mean it's a given, but there is a chance. You look at Stockport fighting at the sort of, they're going to be playoffs, aren't they, in League Two?
Yeah.
But they've got a chance of going up and then up again. It takes money. It takes, a lot of things to come together. But you feel like Notts have got a lot of things right. And you feel like this has got to be the time to do it. But if it isn't doomsday. We don't unravel. We don't, we've still got the massive nucleus of a really, really top team and a top club. So we hope it's this season. Of course, we pray it's this season. But if it isn't, it doesn't unravel, because what we've got is an unbelievable fan base that's getting behind the team, that's been given something to cheer about, that's been given a standard of football that's not been seen for years, that's been given optimism and hope as opposed to pessimism and doom and gloom. Now, that in itself, the NBA guy, who's whatever his name is, he would say, now that is a success. Obviously, we want the ultimate success of promotion to go with it. But if it isn't, it's not doom and gloom, but we use it for fuel for next season to kick on and go and get more than 107 points next season, whatever division we're in.
James Spring says, as fans, we're mentally scarred by the playoffs, but I really believe this team is different. Luke Williams has instilled a win at all costs mentality. Last 46 games means note now, got to go to war twice more. Atrophis says, don't fear being beaten in 90, but we've been known to draw, which is no good in the playoffs. I don't want pens. Keith Mullins, I have the same feelings going into these playoffs that I had for the first set under Neil Warnock. Get in, says Chris B, to Stell's eulogy. I tell you, I think's probably the single most important person factor, call it what you will, in these playoffs. And I don't actually think it's Macaulay Langstaff or Ruben Rodriguez, Sam Slocum, Matty Palmer. I think it's Luke Williams, because with the same set of players, one manager can get massively different and more successful results to another. And I think those successful managers imbue their own characteristics, their own mentality, those sorts of things into a group of players. And I think, as Keith has just mentioned there, with Neil, you always felt, the job would be done. When Steve Cottrell came in, you felt the job would be done, having come in when the club was 6th or 7th and went on to win the Division 2 title. And I don't want this to get into, a critical fest or whatever you want to call it of Ian Birchnell. Most people know my views. I felt supremely unconfident that we were going to get a result against Grimsby. And everybody around me who I spoke to really were very pessimistic about Grimsby. But I think with Luke, there is and Ryan Harley in the background. There is more resilience. There is more desire. Call it what you will. But I think this is a very pivotal moment in Luke Williams's career as well as Notts County's, isn't it, Stell?
Oh, it's a massively important one. Of course it is. You're quoting there Neil Warnock, great manager who's had a great career, still having a great career. 19th comeback, isn't it? More comebacks than Elvis. But you still talk about them badges of honour, the 4 playoff wins. You win a playoff, that's there forever. You can't erase it. It's in history. It's in the books. It's there. Can't be taken away. So when you have a season like Notts have had, and the 2 words I would use for Luke Williams, I think what he's had, I thought that Ian Birchnell's team or Notts team played some fantastic football. Really did. I thought that would take some beating. I thought we were a little bit soft at times, a little bit nice. What I think Luke Williams has got is playing even better football. He's added steel and intensity. And I think if you ever see Luke with his interviews and how he is, I think that if ever a manager's character defines a team, that is what I would say to him. And I enjoyed this week seeing him, or last week, was it having a little bit of a laugh. There was a deer, wasn't it, at the training ground, and he's talking about, we had the analysts looking at how we shepherded him off the pitch. We go, well, he has, he knows that he can have a laugh and a joke. But I think throughout the season, it's his steel and intensity added to, eye to detail, and all the technical aspects as well, of being a good coach, good manager, good man manager. I think there's been a steel and intensity in this Notts team that hasn't been there previously. That gives us all a little bit more confidence, a little bit more belief that, when we lost at Dorking, we all wondered, but that steel, that intensity came out 25 games unbeaten. And look, I know Wrexham have done similar and bettered it, this season, and all credit to them. But I think Luke Williams, for that, what he's added to Notts is the most you can ask a head coach manager to add to a group of players. That's however much 5% that a manager can add. Can't necessarily make everybody a better player than they are. You can't make somebody play at Premier League level if they're only National League standard, but you can get extra percents out of them. You can get the team galvanised. You can get everybody working in harmony, knowing each other's role, knowing what's expected and demanding off each other as well. That's what makes a good team. And to go back to Neil Warnock, as brilliant as Neil Warnock's career has been, he will, I'm sure, at some point admit he had good players in them teams because he couldn't have done it without good players. He will say he got an extra 25% out of all the players. Of course he would. But that's what a manager gets. And I think what Luke Williams has done this season has been phenomenal. Again, it's the players that cross the white line. They all have to. So the players have been phenomenal. But I think Luke Williams has been that added ingredient, that added, steel and intensity allied to the quality that we absolutely already had. And he's provided a structure and a team framework that, well, I was going to say second to none. It's been second to one this season, and that's Wrexham. But Wrexham have had to spend a lot of money to be that one. Notts have spent a bit of money, but not anything in the same framework. So I think what he's done, he's got Notts punching way above, the levels that we expected. And we now hope that they can do that for 2 more games, and that gets us where we want. And we go, never mind failure, what a success this season's been.
Chris Gosling sums it up. We worried at the start of the season that our style and intensity could lead to end-of-season burnout. Luke has answered that question emphatically. Chris also adds, Luke has never made any excuses for under-par performances. He is going to fire the lads up. Okay, well let's end on those positives. We will all be eagerly watching Barnet Boreham Wood Tuesday night, and then it's the big one on Sunday 12:30. Expecting a bumper crowd. It'll be interesting to see what we think we can actually get. Barnet would probably bring 1,500 or so. Not sure about Boreham Wood, but look, let's everybody get ourselves down there. We should, I would hope, be able to accommodate just about every Notts fan that wants to come down. We'll have extra capacity in the Jimmy Cyril to get home fans in. Virtually nothing left in the Pavis and the Cop, I think, as we speak. Stel, you will obviously be on commentary duties. We know that Charlie's now being elevated to the upper echelons of Premier League commentaries, but I trust he will still be slumming it with us on Sunday.
He won't be slumming it. He'll be there, but he won't be slumming it. Yeah, he's there. I'm there. So, yeah, like I say, all those people that are listening, we can only apologise. We try our best. But, yeah, it should be a great day. Really looking forward to it. You know, I think it's going to be a virtual sellout, isn't it? Meadow Lane's going to be rocking. And we all just hope that if the Notts team that we've seen all season turn up, then it's going to be a fantastic occasion.
On that note, let's finish the show. We'll be back next week with Monday, and we will all hopefully be working out routes to Wembley. But we focus only on Sunday. Thank you very much, Mark, as always, tonight. Thank you very much to everyone for all your comments, lots of them tonight. If you've not seen the Neil Warnock one-on-one playoff show, please take a look at that one. It is very good value, and you will feel confident about Notts. In that video, Neil says that, you know, Notts are on the way up, on the way back. Let's hope we are. Thank you very much, everyone. I look forward to catching up again next week. Bye for now.
Cheers.